So verse 19, when they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, they talked with him at the door of the house and said, "O sir, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, but it happened when we came to the encampment that we opened our sacks, and there each man's money was in the mouth of a sack. Our money is in full weight. So we have brought it back in our hand, and we have brought down other money in our hands to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." Jacob's sons explained to the steward, "Hey, this is all just a big misunderstanding. We're not really sure how we got the money back, but we've brought the money, but we want to make it right here. We want to pay what we owe you." But look at what the steward says in verse 23. He says, "Peace be with you. Don't be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money." And then he leaves. And he goes and gets Simeon and brings Simeon out to them. The steward says, "Hey, your God gave you your money back." Now, how did this Egyptian steward know about their God, the God of the Hebrews, from working with Joseph? He works with Joseph. Joseph shared with his co-workers about his God. In fact, we've seen that Joseph used every opportunity to tell others about his God. If you remember back in chapter 40, when Joseph was in prison and the butler and the baker had their dreams, and Joseph said, "Well, interpretation belongs to God. God will give you Elohim will give you the interpretation." In chapter 41, when Joseph was brought before Pharaoh to interpret Pharaoh's dream, he said, "Well, it's not in me, but God will give Pharaoh understanding." God can tell you what your dream's about, Pharaoh. And again, he uses the name Elohim. And those were the first words out of Joseph's mouth to the most powerful ruler in the world. Well, God will tell you. I can't help you, but God can. And so as we look at Joseph, we see he's always using every opportunity to share about his God. And we should follow Joseph's example. Use every opportunity presented to us to share Jesus Christ with people. And even look for opportunities and ways that we can bring Jesus Christ into the conversation. So verse 24, the man brought the men into Joseph's house, and look what it says. He gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys feed. When we come into the house of the Lord, we're washed by the water of the word. We're refreshed by the Holy Spirit. Verse 25, then they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they would eat bread there. Remember, they've got this gift basket that they put together. They get that ready to present to the prime minister. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house and bowed down before him to the earth. Now, at this point, all 11 brothers are together. This is the first time all 11 brothers are together before Joseph, and all 11 brothers bow down before Joseph, fulfilling that dream that Joseph had back in chapter 37 when Joseph was a young man, more than 20 years before this. It's finally fulfilled. Verse 27, then he asked them about their well-being and said, is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive? And they probably thought, why is this guy asking us about our dad? Why does he care so much about our father? And they answered, your servant, our father, is in good health. He's still alive. And they bowed their heads down and prostrated themselves again. So they're bowing down again. And then verse 29, then he lifted his eyes and he saw his brother Benjamin. And that's his full brother, his only full brother, his mother's son, and said, is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me? And then he said to Benjamin, God be gracious to you, my son. Now, it's thought that Benjamin was about 3 or 4 years old the last time that Joseph saw him. And now he's in like his mid-20s. And so you can imagine here, it's the first time last time he saw him, he was like a 3 or 4 year old kid. And now he's, in his mid-20s. And so Joseph said, "Is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me?" Most of you are aware that my wife and I are from Florida, and we moved here about 18 years ago to plant this church. And we go down to Florida just about every year to visit family. And when we go to Florida, we go to the Calvary Chapel that we attended and were part of when we lived down there. But we've been away for almost 20 years. And sometimes when we're at that church, I'll see people that were children when we lived there, maybe elementary age, and now they're in their 20s or 30s, and they have kids of their own. And you're kind of like, I think I recognize that. I think that's who that is, right? And you feel kind of old, right? Like, wow. And I'm wondering, are they looking at me shocked at how much I've aged and have grown, or the way that I'm looking at them? There was one time I was down there. I was eating in a restaurant with a family member, and our waiter said to me, "I think you might know my parents." I said, "Really? Who are your parents?" "Oh yeah. Hey, you're not 5 years old anymore. Wow." And that's kind of the situation for Joseph here. He hasn't seen Benjamin for more than 20 years. Last time he saw him, he was like 3 or 4 years old. So he says, is this your younger brother? And then Joseph spoke this blessing to Benjamin: "God be gracious to you, my son." Now remember, Joseph spoke Egyptian. He says this through an interpreter, but Joseph used the name Elohim. Elohim, be gracious to you. He didn't use the name of an Egyptian god, but the God of the Hebrews. This all must seem very odd to his brothers. All of it, they're coming, being called out of the crowd, out of line to go to the prime minister's palace. You're going to have this lunch now with the prime minister, and the steward saying, "Hey, your God blessed you and gave you treasure in your sack," and now here's the prime minister speaking a blessing over their younger brother using the name Elohim and not the name of some Egyptian god. And I'm sure they're thinking, what is going on? What is the deal here? So verse 30, it says, "Now Joseph's heart yearned for his brother. So Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep, and he went into his chamber, and he wept there." So Joseph yearned for his brother. And again, Joseph is a picture of Jesus. Jesus yearns for us. He yearns to be reconciled to us. He yearns to have a relationship with us. And Jesus also wept on 2 occasions in the Gospels. He wept at the tomb of Lazarus, and he wept over Jerusalem because the people of Jerusalem had rejected him as the Messiah. And so Joseph has to excuse himself. He leaves the room, leaves his brothers there in a room, and he goes into another room so that he can weep. And so his brothers were just left there in the palace, by themselves. Well, Joseph is off in some other room for however long. This is getting stranger by the minute for the brothers. So then, it says, verse 31, Joseph washed his face and fixed his eyeliner, right? Because Egyptian men wore eyeliner, right? So he fixes his eyeliner, reapplies his mascara. Unless he had waterproof mascara. The Egyptians were very advanced, it's possible. And he came out. So now he finally comes out. And look what it says. He restrained himself. And he said, "Serve the bread." See, he's holding back his emotions. He's got a lump in his throat, holding back his emotions, and finally just says to the servant, "Serve the bread." Just holding back the tear, just serve the bread kind of thing, before he starts crying again.